Well, welcome everyone to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast. I'm Wendy Rose Williams, and Greg Kirk and I are here twice a month on the second and the fourth Sundays of the month at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And you're welcome to join us live in the Facebook Waking Up Spiritually group, or certainly you can get this podcast via the archives on our website, which is wakingupspiritually.com. Also on our YouTube channel. So welcome to subscribe and follow us there. And we're also getting up onto the podcast apps. So the purpose of this podcast is to help with the journey to wake up spiritually, because it can be a rough road at times, and a helping hand can make all the difference. It can be confusing, and sometimes we just need some quality information from people who've been there also. And my website is wendyrosewilliams.com. I am a past life adventure guide, and I help people release energy that doesn't serve you. Things like pain, anxiety, depression, or that stuck creativity, and just not being able to feel like you can move forward and do the things that you want to do with a lot of joy and feeling like you're on life purpose, or you may feel like you don't have the health to do it. So we want to help you with all those things and just get things more integrated, and having the boat just row in one direction in a more positive way. So Greg, please introduce yourself as well as today's topic.
Yes, I'm Gregg Kirk. You can find me at greggkirk.com. That's spelled GREGGKIRK.com. I'm a light worker, energy healer. I'm also a Lyme disease advocate, and I help patients with various herbal protocols. But I do a lot of energy work that involves things like removing blocks from people throughout past lives, through different dimensions, through other lifetimes, but also in this lifetime. And the main focus is to remove blocks to your ascension, to your energy moving upwards. So today, Wendy and I are going to be talking about some of the miraculous things that we both experiencing miracles and magic. So let me get we have a PowerPoint deck. Let me get that moving and share screen. Here we go. And Wendy, would you like, whoop, of course, it's the last one.
Looks like you're going from the root chakra up to the crown chakra today, Greg.
We did. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Anyway, we're all set now. So
all right. Well, let's start.
You, Wendy.
Let's start with the Northern Lights. How can you not be happy when you're just feeling that sort of healing energy from the world? And we are ready for the next slide. So I love this Einstein quote, and he said there's two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. And I think that it ties right in with that concept too of, certainly we can have things go on that are really challenging in life that we don't enjoy, have to just kind of power through the best we can. But that attitude and that feeling of the universe really does have my back, and feeling like this is happening for a reason and for me in some way, even though I may not understand it at the time, versus feeling like, oh gosh, these horrible things are always happening to me. So just like shifting from that 2 to that 4, I think can really help us get out of that victim or energy place to start to embrace that life really is a miracle. So there's so many definitions, and love to hear from anybody that's live with us today, or you can comment later in the Facebook group, in the Waking Up Spiritually group. How would you define a miracle? So here's a couple definitions. You can see a miracle as an extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. So that's one definition. Or an event that appears inexplicable by the laws of nature, and so is held to be supernatural in origin or an act of God. Greg, I saw that same exact definition that you added. That was my second choice. So that's so perfect. You found the same one and added that in.
This next one I'll speak to because this is my own definition.
Oh, please.
Yeah, yeah. So any experiences that changes matter, consciousness, or energy in a way that cannot be explained by natural occurrences, but can be proven with traditional measures. So, in other words, if you have had well, in my case, I had my physical appearance changed, and I was lucky enough to have photographs, a before and after photograph. So something like that, or in some of the other experiences I've had, where you know a person's body changed that was noticed by a CAT scan or an X-ray, or So these are traditional ways to measure or examine people and to log them for historic purposes. So when those things change by a set of occurrences that are not considered natural, there you go. You've got your proof of a miracle. That's my definition. It's got one foot on the ground, but also looking up at the stars, as Casey Kasem would say.
That's perfect. And what do you consider magical? So, magic can be considered the art of consciously using your intent to create a positive outcome for your life. So, pretty closely aligned with those miraculous events. And I feel like magic, the concept of magic, because really we're all magical beings and magical creatures because we're energy. And I feel like magic has gotten a bad rap in a lot of ways, and people are more familiar with what they call like black magic or dark arts. And guess what? There's always going to be light and there's going to be dark, and that's just the way the world works. And I really feel like it's a lot of the religious conditioning that can take us away. And we also can have put magic very outside ourselves and just be scared of it, have some concerns and that sort of thing. Whereas what if instead it was a natural part of us and it's just part of us stepping into our power? So just some thoughts there to try and open that dialogue a little bit wider. So here's what we're going to discuss today. A couple of examples from both of us, three from each. And I'm going to talk about an incredible experience I had with a white ball of light, as well as a shared death communication that I had when my uncle was dropping his body and passing on. And also a story about a magical orchid, a white orchid I have in my kitchen now that has been blooming for months and months and months beyond all reason. So we'll talk about that. And
Nice.
Greg, what are you going to recap for us?
Well, probably the biggest miracle I've ever experienced was my healing miracle when I went to Brazil. So I'll try to keep that one brief because I included several chapters in my book, the Gratitude Curve. So if you're interested in that, in hearing more about that, you can check my book out on Amazon. An ovarian cyst emergency. This is actually a story that happened between my wife and me, and she had to go to the ER. So I'll describe that one. And then the final one is a 400-year-old shoulder injury. So this is some healing work I did with a Lyme disease patient who had a past life experience healing that had a dramatic effect on her. A miraculous effect that was measured by medical means. so,
Fantastic.
so let's get right to it.
I wish I was Netflix. I wish I had the proper image for you here. You need to picture this white ball of light as just being this sparky, alive type of light. So let me set the stage. March of 2013 was one of those low points in my life. I had a ghost that I had been experiencing since 1990, so for decades. And this ghost would not go home to the light. And I also was experiencing tremendous physical pain. It had been decades of pain for me. I have scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine, and that had been diagnosed before I was in my teens, so junior high, back when they used to do the screenings for that. And I hope they still do. And then had surgery for it as a 13-year-old, and my spine was all fused, and there's a 14-inch metal rod in there. But just because you've got these physical things, it doesn't mean you have to have pain from them, and it doesn't mean you have to have so many limits from them. So that's what we'll talk about. And back in 2013, I also had a broken heart that I could not heal. I had broken up with my boyfriend in 2011, so it was 2 years later, and I had done everything right, but it just wasn't working. So I scheduled my first healing session with a mystic, with a psychic healer who's a Reiki master and just an amazing channel that a friend had recommended highly. I was very new to healing sessions. I didn't really know what to expect or what was going to happen. I think I probably looked like a secretary about to take steno notes, because when I sat down to have that first phone session with her, I'm sitting there with like a little spiral notebook. Like I have to like write it all down for any of this to make sense or to happen or to be real for me. And it took some time to get the appointment. It took me 3 weeks to get scheduled with her because I needed an evening appointment, because I worked full time, and I just didn't realize, if I'd been smart, I would have simply carved out that hour during the weekday. But everything works out as it's supposed to. So I scheduled the appointment, not knowing what to expect, but just knowing I needed a change, and I was willing to take the risk because things were really darn challenging in so many areas. And after I scheduled that appointment, the very next night, I suddenly wake up. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, and above my bed is this incredible, it was probably like the size of a big beach ball. There was this white orb of light above me, and it was so alive, and there was so much energy coming from it. And I was so startled and amazed, like, how can I be seeing this? Because I was not especially clairvoyant. I was not used to seeing things that are not there physically. And what does that mean anyway? You got to start to think in kind of a broader context. But I could hear this ball of light, and I knew it was to do with the appointment I booked. I knew it was with that healer. I knew that's who was there in that white ball of light. And I thought, oh my gosh, she lives in another state, but why do I have a feeling that she got up early and she's meditating? She is sending me healing energy. And I could hear clear as day, from this woman that I've never met, I've never spoken with. I just booked, through the person who did her scheduling. And she just said, I'm going to help you now. I'm sending you healing energy to get you through until your appointment. I just want you to know you're going to be okay. And it still makes me tearful. And it's how many years later, because just the relief from that. It was such a profound moment. And I had an incredible session with her 3 weeks later. And it really was a tremendous turning point. And she was able to confirm what had been going on with that ghost that just wouldn't go home, which you can read about in my book, on Amazon. Plymouth Plantation, the Flow One Plymouth Plantation. So just simply go to Amazon and look for my full name, Wendy Rose Williams, and you'll find the book there and learn what the experiences were with that ghost. And the healer helped me. So I thought we were going to spend the hour on the ghost. Instead, we took care of that literally in 1 minute flat. And it was just a matter of a soul retrieval and getting that ghost back in the right place, in my timeline, because it turned out to be my own ghost from an earlier lifetime, hundreds of years ago. And she also was able to help me with that tremendous physical pain. We got a lot of things squared away. It was the first time I was ever able to feel my chakras. So that was a big deal. And she also helped me address what was going on with the broken heart. And we made some important soul contract changes. So that's what happened. But just to see that ball of light and to feel that love and powerful healing coming from another person for me, it was a really big deal. I'm very grateful for it.
Wow. Amazing. I feel like I should hold this photo until the end, but it's too late. You've already seen it now. But a before and after shot. So just real as briefly as I can. I went through several years struggle from Lyme disease, and got to a point where I really was praying to die. I got very, very ill from it, almost died from some of the treatments, and went through a very harrowing situation. So by the time I thought about going to Brazil, I was, I had hit my nadir, the low spot, and I'd stopped taking antibiotics. And I started experimenting with some herbal treatments. I was getting a little better. I was on a scale of 1 to 100, I was only at about 65. So I wasn't, at death's door anymore, but I had a long way to go before I wanted to get back to, complete wellness. So after staying in the allopathic world and the Western medicine world for 6 years, and not finding it to have any benefit to me, in fact, it was beginning to harm me, I started going outside. So I had been consulting a psychic for several years, but I had found out about this healer named John of God just a few days before. I asked the psychic about John of God, and it completely lined up. She said I should go. It was going to be, really monumental for my healing. And so I did it. And, it was one of those things where it seemed impossible. I was working a corporate job. I didn't think I'd be able to you had to go down there for 2 weeks. I didn't think I was going to get 2 weeks off. I didn't have my passport was out of date. I needed to get a visa to go down there for that length of time. And the people I talked to, who are the tour leaders down there, just said, you know what? You're going to get down here. You're going to be surprised, because if it's the right thing for you, how all the doors are going to fly open. She was absolutely right. And, they spoke of it when we got to Brazil. They said, just the first miracle happened of you getting here, because literally just 3 weeks before, I hadn't even heard of John of God or this healing center in Brazil. And then now here I'm here. And just real quickly, I just want to say, if you're interested in seeing John of God, you can't, because he's in jail, which is, I know, some of your heads are probably spinning right now. Wait a minute, Gregg went to go see a healer in Brazil and now he's in jail. Believe it or not, yes, that's what happened. This was a healer who did phenomenal healing on a monumental level, but he,
For
I guess,
decades.
for multiple decades, for almost 50 years, healed more than 1 million people. It was like on a biblical level, but he molested some women, or sexually abused them, about a dozen of them, and that shut everything down. So, it's a strange situation. On the one hand, he did all these amazing things that healed so many people and changed people's lives. They made movies about him. And on the other hand, he squandered all this because he's a human being, and he fell into his weaknesses, his appetites, however you want to call it. But anyway, so enough about that. I'm writing a second book, so I'll talk more about that, because I'm still in touch with people who are in Brazil. But the healing center is still there. A few people still go through, but it's not like it was. But anyway, at this point, things were on the up and up when I went down there, but I was very ill, and the 10-hour plane flight did not do me any favors. I was just exhausted. As you can see in the photograph on the left, I was swollen. My face was asymmetrical. I was having Herxheimer reactions, symptom spikes. I was really in a bad way. So I was ready to heal. I would say the best thing that I did was I just dove in. I had no expectations of healing. I didn't even really, find out all the details of what John of God did. My wife did all that. And she said, do you realize you have to wear white every day you're down there, and that you can't flush toilet paper down the toilet, and you've got to drink, a certain amount of this special water. And she's like, this sounds like a cult. And, I just thought, well, what, I'll give it a try. It wasn't a cult, but, the energy work that's down there is on such a profound level. They do ask you to wear white, so the entities that are down there can actually see your energy body better. So that's
So
how it
there's a lot
works.
of protocol.
So there's some protocols, and there's a lot of rules when you go down there. You would sit in certain rooms and meditate, and and a lot of rules after you go through a healing. And there's different types of healing. Like he actually would cut, and I witnessed it within hours of being there. He cut into people. They didn't bleed. I watched him. I was stood just a few feet away from him. He scraped people's eyes with scalpels, their corneas. He put forceps deep into people's heads, and just unbelievable, sensational physical operations. But then,
Wow.
yeah, but luckily, for the people like me, you would just go into a blessing room and sit there, and then he would come in and just say a few words, and you could feel sensations all over your body. And some people would feel shoved to the right or the left. And basically, what he had going on down there was a network of beings, of healing beings, hundreds of them. So while it was important that he incorporated within himself, it was actually more important to everyone else there that these hundreds of beings would come. And basically they told you in Brazil that a phalange is the word they used. They speak Portuguese down there. In other words, a special healing team was put together when you would go there, and they would come and work on you based upon what you needed. And it was profound. I could spend 2 hours talking about every detail of what happened down there, but suffice to say, the first day I went, or the second day I went, I had what's called a spiritual intervention or psychic surgery. So I felt, it felt like electric needles were all over my body. And 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 then they said, as soon as you have the healing done, you got to treat yourself like you've been under the knife for real.
Your post-op.
Yeah. So they had a taxi cab pick me up and literally drive me 2 blocks to my hotel. And I said, I don't need this. And they said, don't, you got to take this seriously. Don't fight us on this. So I did. I went, and this was like 10 in the morning, so they said, now go to bed. And I'm hanging out talking to people, and they said, no, don't talk to people. Don't mingle your energies with other people. Go to bed right now. And they said, if you're not sleepy, just close your eyes anyway. And I did. I didn't wake up for 18 hours. And when I woke up, I looked like a truck had hit me. My eyes were all dilated. I felt just pulled through a knothole. I didn't feel good. I felt like some massive healing had taken place. And within a day of that, I felt completely different the other way. I felt like after I got all the toxins out of me, I felt like I had gone through this profound physical healing. So I went through that another time, but towards the end of the healing, they brought us to a waterfall, and that I didn't think anything about this. So the spiritual waterfall. So a group of us who had already been through some healings, they told us that we were going to go to this certain area. You couldn't take photographs. There were all these. There was 2 cans flying around. There's monkeys. There's these blue morpho butterflies. It's like paradise. And there's this little waterfall that you go into, and you let it hit you. And there was something spiritual about it. And I just thought it was like a metaphor. I just thought, oh yeah, this is just a nice thing to do. But my reaction to it was, when this water hit, well, first of all, before the water hit me, I felt my physical being change. I felt everything go away. And I'm standing around looking at everybody. It's an 80-degree day, and you could see our breath like it was a 5-degree day. So everybody, you could see our breath around this waterfall. It was strange. Then as the water hit me, I felt like my entire body went into a paroxysm. I clenched. And then the people there said, okay, it's all right. I couldn't breathe. They said, breathe, let it go, let everything go. Not meaning, not just like everything that you're holding on to. And it was the most profound physical and metaphoric experience I've ever had. As I let go of all the things I was holding on to, the water was hitting me and washing it away. And and then and the water, by the way, was very cold. So it was a shocking experience. And finally I got to the point where I was letting it hit me in the chest, all over. And, there we were on the banks of this little tiny river. with where the waterfall was, and we were all just exploding with energy. It's such a profound experience. So we go back up to the hotel, and they told us, like, you might not want to shower for a while, let this water sink in. So I just decided to wash my face and hands. I washed my face and hands. I looked up in the mirror, and I just laughed because I didn't look anything like I had just looked an hour before. Completely different. And so I was going through, I just laughed and I just said, is really, that's what this place is all like. This is a supernatural place. And so I got on the phone with my wife to do FaceTime, and I didn't even say anything to her. She just saw me and she said, "Oh my God, what happened to you? You look different." I said, "Really? Okay. I just thought I was in the supernatural place where everything was happening." But yeah, she said, and I choked up and I said, "I'm healed," because every symptom had gone away. And so the two pictures here, the one on the left was the moment I got off, the shuttle bus from the hotel, and I was very sick. And the one on the right is that was the day I left. And I probably age regressed 10 years, and it began a combination, a spontaneous combination of spiritual openings, and it's sent my life in a different trajectory, that's for sure.
And Gregg, what a difference of how in your body you are and how your life force energy is there in
Yeah,
the second picture. I mean,
yeah.
it's really kind of night and day.
Yeah, yeah. I look at it now, I'm like, okay, it's not as dramatic. Like when I first saw it, and it was way more dramatic. But yeah, absolutely, you can tell that the puffiness, and I'm kind of just fuzzy, blurry, on the left, and on the right, I'm like, yes,
Mhm,
I'm here.
mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
So
That's wonderful. What an amazing, I mean, that's just miracles and magic and like you said, supernatural all wrapped up in
yeah, yeah,
one.
right. And like I said, I was so fortunate in because after I did change, I was saying to somebody down there, I said, you know what, I think I took my before shot, because when I got off the shuttle bus, there was this really nice blooming tree that was in the yard of the hotel, and I thought, oh, I'll take my picture, selfie next to this pretty tree, and then
Sure.
and I said, that's my before shot, and then the day we left, I took my after shot. So anyway, let's move on to
All
Wendy's
right. Well,
second
I'd like
story.
to share with you a shared death communication that I had with my uncle. And what the situation was, my uncle Jack was across the country from me. He was in the Outer Banks of the Carolinas, and I was at my home in Seattle. And he had been quite ill for multiple months. He had uh, ended up in a nursing home because he had not been able to orient to time and place anymore. And so some cognitive issues were coming up as well as some real physical issues. He was essentially bedbound, and he was starting to pass on. And he just so wanted to be at home. He wanted to be at home with hospice rather than being in the nursing home. He really did not like the nursing home he was in. So my aunt, his wife, was talking with the hospital about what possibilities were, et cetera. And he ended up dislocating his shoulder in the nursing home and had to go to the hospital. And that was a really fortunate event because they found at that time that he was moving very rapidly into kidney failure. So he really was at the point where he only had a couple days left to live, was their estimate. So she did bring him home at that point. She was able to get hospice arranged and have 24/7 nursing care in their home. And he was thrilled. And this became an analogy because we're hearing about this over the phone, and my mom's talking with him on the phone, and he's talking with his daughters by phone. And, so I'm kind of getting the information secondhand. But it became such an analogy of he wanted to go home to his home that he loved. They put a big hospital bed in by these big windows, and he's just looking out over the Outer Banks. He's looking out over the water, and he wanted to go to his physical home so he could pass on to his spiritual home. So he wasn't back in his house more than 24 hours before he did pass. But what he started to do was to go on what I call the farewell tour. And I got woken up very suddenly one morning. And because midnight, my cat is just standing on my chest, like staring right in my face to wake me up. And I'm like kind of grumbling because the alarm hasn't gone off yet. And the minute I woke up and looked at him and I could see he was waking me up for a reason, I looked around the room and I sensed this energy. I could see there was a spirit in like the far left corner of my room where I had a reading chair and book and lamp. So I just put, a nice bubble around midnight and I where we were, just, shields up, not out of fear, but just best practice. And then tuned into, okay, who's here visiting? And it was my uncle. And I clearly could tell it was my uncle. And I asked him, I said, Jack, how are you doing? And he said, I want to go home. He says, I'm ready to go home. He says, I'm making the rounds. I'm so happy to be in my house. I can't tell you how great it feels to be like looking out over the water and I'm starting to pass up to the light. And so we just had this lovely conversation. And I asked him, I said, do you need any help? Can I do anything for you? Do you want to practice walking to the light once? And he said, sure, I would like to do that. Let's do that together. So we did. And I could only go to a certain point because obviously I was choosing to stay here and still stay attached to my body. But as I saw him leave and walk into the light, he had already de-aged. And you have to realize he's just in the broken down body of an elderly man. He's well into his 80s. He can't even get out of bed on his own anymore. It takes two people to get him out of bed to go to the bathroom. There's just not a lot of good things left, not a lot of pleasure left in life for him. And as I saw him walking into the light, I just cracked up because he looked over his shoulder to say, kind of like, look at me. And he was already back into like his late 40s. And he was wearing these just these cut off shorts, these denim shorts that we always made fun of him back when I was in high school. And we're like, oh my God, Jack, do you have to wear those like every day? As soon as you get home, you like get into those shorts, in the summer when it's nice. We were living in upstate New York at the time, and you just like crack open that beer. And he would often come over to my mom and my apartment. He lived fairly close. So it's kind of like, brother and sister having happy hour, and I'm there as the niece in high school. But that's what he looked like. And I think he just like appeared to me that day because it was like a happy memory for us. It was like kind of a highlight. And I later found out that both his daughters sensed him that morning too, and it was perfect because he did pass on later that day. I went to work after watching him walk into the light and just getting such a smile out of it. And I knew he was passing home peacefully. And I got the call at work maybe 3 hours later, your uncle died. He's passed on. I said, okay, I understand. It was my mom who called me. Mom, do you need anything? And, we kind of went through the real world stuff of she wanted to fly out there for the memorial service. And we were planning when I would take her to the airport for that. And my two cousins, his two daughters, it was just perfect because they lived close enough, with some effort. They got off work and they drove out there. He was, I don't know, 4 or 6 hours away or whatever distance, but they got there in time. And they both also said they had like kind of like a similar experience of like sensing him in a dream or just like sensing his energy as he was doing this farewell tour. So it really was a neat experience. I felt kind of privileged because I wasn't able to fly out and visit him while he was in the nursing home, and I didn't fly out for the service. I kind of just held the energy for everybody from where I was in Seattle, but I felt really honored and I felt really fortunate that I could have that experience with them. So those shared death communications, they are very real. Anyone can have them. You don't have to be a psychic medium or certified for this or that. It's just about love. It's just you feel that connection and that person can come through to you. So again, I wish I was Netflix. I wish I had the photo of, the man in those 1970s cut off shorts, but
Right.
just go with it.
Walking with the light. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, a couple of things you said, I've heard other people report, that my sister-in-law has had more than once a loved one who was in the process of passing on show up at the foot of her bed. Um, so yes, that seems to be a gift that she has. She's got no other psychic abilities or anything like that, but she seems to be the I don't know what you would call it, the usher or whatever of it,
Part of the farewell tour.
right? Who's on the farewell tour. The other thing is, something that I see when people have passed over. They, a lot of people obviously, especially people who pass in their old age, their bodies are broken down and they're older and they've aged, pretty profoundly. But when they come back, they present as them in their 20s or 30s, or a period of time when their life force was really strong and they're young and healthy. So yeah,
Exactly.
not always
Exactly.
sporting the cutoff shorts though. But all right, so this is another personal story of mine that swear I'm not plugging my book, but this is in my book as well. So Gratitude Curve, check it out. But so this story happened after I came back from Brazil, and it was an emergency. My wife was in the middle of. I was actually in the middle of meditating, and she ran upstairs and she said, "Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt your meditation, but I have to go to the hospital." Of course, what? That's not something she says, very often. So, and she has a pretty high tolerance for pain. So I said, "What's going on?" She said, "I've got this ovarian cyst that is like it's scaring me. The pain is scaring me. I've got to go to the ER." So at the time, my daughter was really young. We had to go drop my daughter off at my mother-in-law's house, and we went right to the hospital. And at this period in time, I was only doing energy work on family and friends. So I was not doing it for any kind of a living or anything. And so I nowadays I would think, oh, well, before we go to the hospital, let me see how I can help. Maybe we can avoid that. Not in these days. In these, this time it was just let's get going. So we went and we got set up in one of those, very non-private ER rooms where you're just separated by a curtain. There's other people next to you, and she's lying there. She's in just agony. And keep in mind, I watched her go through childbirth, and it was like that level of pain. So the first thing they did is they came in and they gave her an IV of morphine, and that scared me to death because within seconds of her getting the morphine, she just slumped over, like it was knocking her out, like not in a good way. So I said, whoa, stop with the morphine. She's not responding well to that. I think she's just going to have to tough the pain out. So they gave her a sonogram, just to see what was going on. So they had the results of that. And they came back and said, listen, it's a cyst that's so large that it's starting to slump over. And if it cuts off the circulation to your ovary, we're going to have to do surgery. And at that point, something in me said, not on my watch. So that's ridiculous. I don't know why. I had that reaction of like, hell no. So they walked out, closed the curtain. I said, Tracy, I'm going to lay hands on you. Let's see what I can do. So the first time I ever did it, I just knew exactly what to do. I put one hand underneath her. I put another hand on top of her. I started moving my hands around. I did a scan, and I could see a little ball of light where her ovary was. It was the cyst. And I just held it, and I just brought love energy through me, and I just brought it down to that little ball of light, and I just watched it burst. And, it only took a few minutes. And I just thought, all right, well, I did that. And she said, oh, that felt good. Like your warm hands like made the pain feel like it went away. I said, okay, good. So I didn't think anything of it at that point. I just thought, if I could give her some pain relief, that's fantastic. So they wheel us into another room, and and this room is where they're we consulted with some doctors, and they told us the same thing pretty much, like if this thing gets any bigger, it's going to have to come out and or be lanced or what, it's going to involve surgery. So they said, we're going to give you a CAT scan. It's going to give us a much better image of what's going on, and then we'll tell you what the next step is. So we're waiting in there, and we wait a few minutes, and then the doctors come in the room, and they have this funny look on their faces, like they don't know what's going on. And they said, listen, we're not sure what just happened, but the cyst is 50% collapsed, and it's on its way to being collapsed. Like it's going away. They're like, we did the sonogram, and it was big and it was growing, and that was just a few minutes ago. But now this thing is like burst and it's collapsing, and you can go home. They said you can stay if you want for further observation. We said no, 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 and I just looked at Tracy like, whoa, look at that, look at what just happened. So anytime she'd ever had a cyst like that happen again, and by the way, now I do it with other patients who have cysts. It's like a little specialty I've developed where I can see them, and I can actually, it just happened the other day, even with kidney stones. It's the same idea. I put my hand under the back, and sometimes I'll just put a finger on a certain area, and we can feel the heat just rising out of this thing. It's stuck energy, and anyway, it worked. So there's an example of energy healing, like literally being documented as being successful. So that I felt really good about that.
That's amazing. And I mean, the body is so capable of healing itself, particularly when you're working with someone. And it's also a great story too, Greg, of just showing if this is not a contest. We can have it's mind, body, spirit, and it's however we can bring in the best healing through the different types of healing modalities.
Right. Absolutely. But the idea of surgery for me was like, that sounds way too drastic. There's got to be something else.
Understand,
Yeah.
understand.
So let's move to the magical orchid.
All right. So I wanted to host the archangels. I've got a written process that I have from it was a psychic in Scandinavia, I believe, who originally came up with this concept that we can ask to host the archangels in our home for 5 days. And she developed this program and this protocol. It's completely free. I've got it written down. I've done it multiple times. I've done it probably 6 or 7 times myself where I've hosted the archangels. And it's wonderful. There's like a little bit of preparation to it. And what they recommend is you buy some type of white flour and put together this simple little altar, also some apples, some nice fresh apples, or substitute other fruit if you can't eat or don't like apples. And also, you get to write 3 wishes, 3 intents of what you'd like to work on together with the angels. And then they're working on making that happen while they're in your home. And the 3 wishes are one for yourself, one for your family, and one for humanity or the earth. And so I purchased this orchid. It's on the half price table, the plants that are going to die table in the grocery store. So I buy it for $6. It's in poor condition in November of 2020. Orchids normally bloom maybe 6 to 10 weeks. When I look that up, mine typically only last about 3 to 6 weeks. But the minute I got it home and started working with it and started planning to host the Archangels for this program, I was like, oh, wow. I could see literally kind of like your before and after pictures, Greg. I could see very quickly, even the next day, I'm kind of cocking my head, looking at it like, oh, wow, you look better. And it just kept getting better and better and better. It got into full bloom. It's actually bloomed more. And I counted it out on the calendar. It's been 24 weeks that magical orchid is still in full bloom today. And I really think it was the energy from aligning and working with and being open to working with that divine energy, specifically archangels, but we can open to other divine energy too, certainly. So I hosted them November 10th through 14th was the period I chose to do it. And each time I've done this program, just really miraculous, magical things have happened. And what happened that week was my mother, who is 82, she had a stroke on November 11th, 11/11. And it turned out, a lot of medical care, a lot of worry, a lot of, oh my goodness, how do we get this blood pressure down? What's going to happen with this? Emergency room visit, just a lot going on. But she was fortunate, and it was a TIA, so a mini stroke. Um, and she fully recovered from it. But that happened during that week too. And I felt like there was some extra angelic help and healing work already here that week. So anyone that would like to contact me, I would be happy to walk you through on the phone how you prep for this, how you might want to work with this program. As I said, there's no charge for it. And I can then just email you the write up and just have fun with it because it's really an amazing program. You can choose to do it at the same time as friends. Maybe you'll have friends and you compare notes, what you experienced. That helps if you're really scientifically minded or very left brained and it's hard to believe experiences like this. It can be nice to have friends doing it too and see if they also have an experience. And just that's what that program's about. So invite you to try it. And you can reach me via my website, wendyrosewilliams.com. And here's the link for anybody that's able to just click on that link. And I'd love to hear from you and tell you more about this neat program.
Nice. So I have another X-ray documentation. And this is a Lyme patient I began seeing years ago. I started a residency a couple of years ago in a wellness center in Woodbury, Connecticut. I spoke to several Lyme patients there, doing a Lyme awareness speech and presentation, and then it turned into an ongoing healing events that I ran there. Every couple of weeks. And this one woman in particular came in, and she was very depressed. She was losing her identity. She'd gone through a big speech with me to describe what her identity had been, and she'd really liked it. She'd owned a little shop that a lot of people had come to, and a lot of people in the town liked to go to. In fact, a couple got engaged there, and and she was known as the woman of this shop. And and she said she lost all of that when Lyme disease hit her. And
Mm.
and and I really felt for her because I'd gone through the same experience. And I gave her the advice of, listen, sometimes you're being pushed, while that is a great memory, you're being pushed to be a new and if you can let go of that old life, you can really heal. And you're probably being pointed right now by this disease into a different direction. And she wasn't quite ready to hear that yet. And furthermore, she brought me a file about an inch thick of all of her tests. And she basically was trying to show me, look, I'm really sick. And I said, I just did a quick look at the file, and I said, I'm validating you. I believe you. I know you're sick. Because one of the things that happens with Lyme patients is the doctors don't believe them. They many traditional doctors don't even know what Lyme disease is, but the ones who do think it can be cured right away. And instead, they like to put different diseases on it and say, oh, well, really, you've got rheumatoid arthritis, or really, maybe you're depressed, and you know, maybe you should go see a psychologist. And it happens so often that patients' symptoms not being held as valid is it's a big deal for Lyme patients. So I wanted to make sure that she understood. I I I believe you. So we sat down to do in-person sessions. So we did a couple of in-person, Reiki style sessions with tuning forks. And one of the things I did in particular, her brow was furrowed, so she had these little crow's feet right above her nose all the time. Her brow was always, she always had this anxiety and sense of concern on her face. So I put one tuning fork there every time I met with her to try to loosen that up. But anyway, we did 2 physical sessions and she got a little bit better, and she also complained of a rotator cuff tear. And so I put tuning forks on her shoulder, and she after the first session she came back and said, "Hey, my physical therapist noticed I had a better range of motion, after the work that we did." I said, "Oh, great. Let's continue and let's keep going." So we did a second session, and then we had to schedule a remote session because she wasn't going to be able to come in person. And she kind of, looked at that as like a consolation prize. And I said, "Hey, listen, these remote sessions can be just as profound, if not more, than the physical session. So, let's not put any expectations on this. You may get something better in this." And she said, "Okay, great." And she was open-minded. And I just want to say, as we get into the description of this remote session, that she was a very Catholic woman. So she was very religious and believed in certain things that I felt as I began to do the session with her. I started to see a past life of hers, of her wearing a powdered wig, and I started getting the information that she had been some kind of a prostitute. So I thought I was at the point where I was just not going to tell her, because I was too embarrassed. I didn't want to bring it up to her. I didn't know how she'd take it, but finally her guides were making me feel so uncomfortable and prodding me to tell her. I told her, I said, "Listen, I see you back in France wearing a powder wig as some kind of a prostitute." She actually took it very well. I said, and then the more the information came in, I could really see the life that she led. She didn't start off that way. She was part of the aristocracy. Um, but, and she had a lot of friends, who they had a lot of money, and they had good homes, and they had children and so forth, but her husband had died. And once that happened, like the bottom of her world fell out. She had no money. I don't know what had happened, but she had no support, no family, and she was literally going to be on the streets. So she went to some of the men that she had known who had a lot of money and began to make a deal with them, to sleep with them if they would help pay for her bills and to keep her in her house. So she did what she had to do. And once she understood that, she felt, of course, better about the situation. But one of the last things I saw was one of these men abused her and pushed her down a flight of stairs and broke her shoulder. And as soon as I mentioned that to her, her shoulder started to heat up, and she reported to me in the call. I said, "Well, that's a good sign. Don't be afraid of it. You're releasing that energy from 400 years ago. So this, it's this place and time is when we needed to do this, and you're getting a good healing." She said, "Okay, great." The session kind of ended, and I thought, "Oh, well, that was a good one." It was very visible. It was vivid. We really seemed to get to the root of the problem, and that was it. So then the next time she came into the wellness center in person, and I was sitting there having a cup of tea with the owner of the wellness center, and we couldn't believe it. She walks in like kicking her heels up, swinging her hips, like we're like, "What?" We just
She
basically
sounds like a
said,
new woman.
exactly. We were like, "What happened to you?" Like it was dramatic. Her aura was just shooting out. She had makeup on that she had not had on before. She was all dressed up and just looking spunky and fine. And she said, "Oh, I was just out shopping, and I'm doing great." And she said, Gregg, the funniest thing happened, after our session, which she said, which by the way was really great. Thank you. Uh, I went to my doctor, she said, to get, measured for surgery. She said I had to have a CAT scan done so they would measure the tear. And, she was scheduled for surgery. And then it was another one of these situations where the doctor came in after the CAT scan and he had this weird look on his face. He said, what happened to you? Like, there's no tear. It's gone. And she said, yeah, well, I did some energy healing. He said, what? He didn't know what that was. And he just said, well, this CAT scan doesn't lie. I don't know whatever you did, you don't need surgery. So go home. So
How
we
fantastic.
were laughing about that, but the story doesn't end there. She leans into me and says, Gregg, by the way, my Lyme disease went away. And now,
What?
yes. Yeah. So that was hard for me to believe as, somebody being a Lyme patient, knowing how difficult it is to have that go into remission. She went into this spontaneous remission. The likes of which I've never seen. So she experienced a complete miraculous healing as a result of that remote session that we were both kind of poo-pooing. So she came back a couple of other times just to get some tune-ups. She didn't need it. She ended up bringing her whole extended family in after that, and they really didn't need it. They were treating it like a fortune-telling session. Like, her daughter came in, am I going to meet a boyfriend? And am I going to get married this year? And I explained to them that's not really the way this works, to your best benefit. This is all about, releasing things that are blocking you, but, they didn't really have that many blocks. But that was the most profound session I've been a part of. I was honored to be a part of it. And she's in full remission today. And it's, God bless her. She was fearless throughout the whole thing. She handled it really well. She had no expectations, which I think is always the key and the hallmark to these complete healings, is you just don't, you don't put any thought into it. You just dive in and do it. And she did. And she ended up, she's lived happily ever after, as they
Oh,
say.
how wonderful.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know what? We timed this perfectly, Wendy. We're right about 2 minutes before the hour. And so, Wendy and I want to let you know this is just part one to our little mini series here of miracles and magic. So we're going to offer up 3 more stories each not next week, 2 weeks from now. But as Wendy always says, meet us the second and the last Sunday in every month, noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. East Coast time. So the next one is April 25th. And you can check us out in our Facebook group, but you can watch this broadcast, the repeat of this, or the rebroadcast of this broadcast on our website, wakingupspiritually.com. Go to the broadcast link. And we do have a YouTube channel. We're in the podcast world now. So, check us out in the apps, the iTunes podcast apps. Wendy, we hit a 50 downloads the other day. I got an email from
Okay,
iTunes. Yep. So we're starting to,
wonderful.
we're
So we're working to get them uploaded because we can only upload so many a month, and we're coming up on 1 year. We'll have been doing this program 1 year in May, so we're starting to think about something fun to plan for that.
yeah.
And also, as Gregg said, this is just going to be a series, so magic and miracles. Gregg, are there any comments in the Facebook group for us to comment on immediately, or are we ready to wrap it up?
No, that's actually very good point. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, okay. Trying to get out of here. Let's
And
see.
my website again is wendyrosewilliams.com, and you're so welcome to visit it and request a complimentary 15-minute phone appointment to see how I may be of service to you. And certainly visit Gregg at his website, which is Gregg, Gregg, Kirk, KIRK.com, to understand some of his wonderful services that he offers. And both of our books are on Amazon, so you can search for our names there.
Yeah, so we have no questions. Just a lot of
Okay,
positive
wonderful.
comments. But you can comment and ask questions on the link on our Facebook page, which we love to answer afterwards. So please ask away.
Absolutely. And people may want to share some of the most miraculous or magical things that have happened to them. So you're welcome to do that in that Facebook group and Waking Up Spiritually. So let's sign off and everyone enjoy a wonderful spring. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks with more stories of magic and miracles.